The horror genre, specifically survival horror, focuses on resource management and finding ammo to stay alive. While some games in the genre are generous when it comes to the amount of ammo provided, other games take it to the next level and make you feel like you're always struggling. When scarce ammo is done right, it makes for some really tense moments. Not having enough ammo means you need to play methodically in combat encounters instead of shooting every enemy you find. Having a focus on scarce ammo is also a great way to encourage players to explore, as the difference between life and death all boils down to breaking every box, searching every drawer, and finding hidden areas in search of the next ammo pack. This video includes 10 games where every single bullet actually matters. To survive in these games, you need to think before you shoot, land every shot you take, and maybe even put an emphasis on headshots in order to take the enemy down. Not following these rules in these games could easily lead to your demise, or having to run away from the enemy and find a safe spot.
While The Evil Within had scarce ammo, The Evil Within 2 took it a step further with even less resources defined. The game's survival horror design forces players to think carefully before pulling the trigger, since once you do, you are left wondering when the next batch of ammo will appear in-game. Due to the unpredictable combat encounters filled with enemies that have strange movement patterns and unique attacks, it's easy to miss a shot and waste the bullet. This design of The Evil Within 2 makes players take a more strategic approach, rather than going into combat encounters aggressively and gunning down the enemy. Since ammo isn't handed out so willingly, players are encouraged to thoroughly explore every level as much as possible, searching endlessly throughout its rooms in order to have a chance of survival. Wasting bullets in this game is painful. And to avoid that feeling, you need to make sure that every shot you take is mandatory in the moment and you better land it on the target.
Tormented Souls and its recently released sequel are both known for their scarce ammo. Every bullet counts in this classic-style survival horror game, so much so that you'll likely have to run away from enemies constantly instead of going gun blazing. Even in assisted mode, which is the game's easiest difficulty, you will frequently be low on ammo, and praying that you don't encounter an enemy before finding some more. The worst part is that players may need a certain item they haven't found yet to break boxes or vases, which are good sources of ammo. Due to Tormented Souls' tank controls and fixed camera angles, it's easy to miss a shot on an enemy, completely wasting one of your bullets. When this happens, you can't help but feel an overwhelming sense of anxiety, because it could very well be your last bullet, and if it's not, then you're most likely close to an empty clip. This leads to you having to run away to safety, which is a real shame considering the enemies are usually blocking the progression path to the next brutal puzzle.
The original Resident Evil, which pretty much put the survival horror genre on the map, is best known for its tense moments due to the lack of ammo. Similar to Tormented Souls mentioned earlier, which is clearly inspired by Resident Evil, this game has fixed camera angles and tank controls. Those two together make it tricky to constantly learn shouts on zombies, resulting in ammo being wasted. Add on the fact that enemies sometimes take more than a few bullets to kill, missing a shot can feel like the end of the world. Players will spend the majority of their time searching every nook and cranny of the game's map for ammo and other resources to help with survival. Finding an ammo pack feels like a godsend, but it's also a sign that you're about to encounter an enemy or two, quickly leading to using said ammo immediately. You're always on the hunt for more bullets to spare, and you may get lucky and find the bunch in one room, but the game never lets you reach the point of feeling fully strapped. Resident Evil is a classic example of a game that focuses on methodical combat, where running is sometimes the smarter action to take.
A list of games where every bullet counts would not be complete if Dead Space wasn't mentioned. Dead Space, one of the biggest names in the survival horror genre, is known for its scarce ammo and the number of enemies it puts you up against. The enemies come in groups in a lot of encounters, and if you didn't mentally prepare earlier by saving ammo for each of your guns, then there's a good chance you won't be able to survive. Each ammo type is hard to come by, making it necessary to constantly stop every corpse, box, etc. I like to compare Dead Space's pace to Resident Evil 4, one of the more action-oriented iterations of Capcom's franchise. But its resource economy is something closer to Resident Evil 2. Having a game with a focus on action, but not providing the player with enough ammo to compensate, makes it where you need to be smart about every shot you take. This means you need to use the game's limb system, where you can shoot off the enemy's arms and legs to disable them, to your advantage.
Alan Wake 2, the trippy sequel to a cult classic, has a good amount of combat, but not enough ammo to go around. This is especially true when playing as Alan versus playing as Saga, who luckily gets more ammo in her missions. However, when you take control of Alan, he is left with minimal sources of ammo, and instead relies on his flashlight to deal damage to the ghostly enemies he encounters. That's not to say that Saga has a ton of ammo at her disposal, as she too can have issues, just not as much. Either way, Alan Wake 2 is all about being a good shot and aiming for headshots to deal as much damage as possible. There were tons of times in my playthrough where I had to deal with a wave of enemies, but not enough ammo to take them all out. This resulted in me having to run around the combat arena, desperately searching for more ammo.
Amnesia, The Bunker, is another game where every single bullet actually counts. The lack of ammo mixed with a monster constantly stalking you make for an intense experience that only the bravest player can endure. The lack of bullets Amnesia The Bunker boils down to making the wrong decisions and using guns at the right time. For example, players may want to shoot padlocks to open doors, shoot explosive barrels in a pickle, or even shoot the monster that stalks them in an attempt to scare it away. While the player may think they are making a wise decision by completing these actions, they are actually ruining their chances in situations where they actually need to use ammo. Instead, use bricks to destroy padlocks and throw Molotov cocktails at the monster and explosive barrels, saving your ammo. Otherwise, you're left with long periods, sometimes spanning for an hour or so, without ammo and feeling defenseless for the most part. Amnesia The Bunker wants you to play smart and take care of your resources, or else you're doomed.
Some people may argue that BioShock isn't a horror game, but it honestly scared me to pieces the first time I played it. It has disturbing enemies, a creepy atmosphere, an unsettling story, and yes, a huge lack of ammo. While the game gives players access to different ways to deal damage to enemies, most of a playthrough will consist of managing your ammo. The lack of ammo in BioShock and even in BioShock 2 makes it where every single bullet counts and you constantly feel underpowered. While you may ever find ammo in this game, you will soon lose it against a big daddy or a group of enemies, leaving you right where you started with an empty clip. While not necessarily considered a survival horror game by the gaming community, it's definitely one at heart, and one where you will feel like you are getting by the skin of your teeth. You will waste bullets, you will regret missing your shot, and you will get frustrated with yourself because of it.
Alien Isolation rewards players for taking a cautious approach and reserving their ammo. This is especially true in the game's nightmare difficulty, where shooting your gun is a last resort and is something you almost never want to do. In fact, the game's main threat, the xenomorph, who stalks the player throughout the game, isn't even weak to most of the game's weapons. Instead, shooting your gun can actually alert the xenomorph and have it come running to your location. This makes every single bullet count tremendously, as you know that firing one of could lead to the xenomorph hunting you down and taking you out. Do you use your ammo to kill a human enemy and risk giving up your location? Or do you take a stealthier approach to ensure that you keep your hiding spot unrevealed from the xenomorph? This is what will constantly go through your head as you play through Alien Isolation. Bloober Team has been on top of its game lately when it comes to the survival horror genre. With the release of last year's incredible Silent Hill 2 remake and the recent Cronos: The New Dawn, these developers clearly know how to create a tense atmosphere. Cronos: The New Dawn is especially tense due to its lack of ammo throughout its entire playthrough. Every single bullet count in this game, and missing a shot on an enemy feels like the end of the world. There are even times when you may have to reload a save, simply because you need to return to a previous area in search of more ammo. However, the lack of ammo never really feels unfair, and you never feel like Bloober Team has gone too far. The ammo economy falls right into the sweet spot of just enough to get by, as long as you put in the effort. The game includes a crafting system where players can craft ammo and resources from materials, but don't expect to find the necessary materials easily. In order to survive against the game's enemies, you're expected to search every nook and cranny for materials and ammo, or else you'll ultimately meet your fate soon enough.
Out of all the newer Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 7 arguably has the least amount of ammo, at least in the early and mid-game. As you explore the Baker's estate, you'll encounter terrifying enemies that take a handful of bullets to take down. The problem is, however, there's such a small amount of ammo to collect throughout the entire building. This leaves you with either having to land each shot on the enemy or running away to safety and search for more. If you want to survive with the lack of ammo in Resident Evil 7, it's necessary that you aim for headshots to deal as much damage as possible. If you aim for anything other than the head, you're simply wasting more bullets than you should, and you're setting yourself for failure in accounting later on. It can be argued that Capcom went a bit too far when it comes to the lack of ammo, but because of it, it's one of the most tense survival horror games out there.